this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here for another Top 10. This time we're going to look at Top 10 TV action stars of the 80s and 90s. And this would have mostly just been a list of the 80s, but there was a few 90s ones that I had to get in there. Of course, you go into the 70s, there's a lot, but what I'm really trying to capture is when you think of the 80s, you think of the ridiculous action stars. And that kind of continued into the 90s, and then it kind of died out. I'm talking Schwarzenegger and Stallone and Cluad Van Dam. There were tons of 80s, Curt Russell, just all of these different action stars. And it felt like a different era because we have people like The Rock today that kind of carry on that legacy, but it's since superhero shows became a big thing, it's like everything is an action thing. You know, it's either an action crime or action. So what were kind of in this heyday of like, it was just action characters. What were the top 10 on TV? Because everybody talks about movies, but what about TV? So while I am taking this from the 80s and 90s, if there's somebody that had something of significant in that time, but they had something from previous or later, that can bump them up in status. But they have to have something of note during those 2 decades. My number 10, Lee Majors. He was Colt from Fall Guys. He's just an all-around action guy. And of course, before that, he was the $6 Million Man. And that alone makes sure that he gets on this list. Fall Guys was fun, but not maybe necessarily a mainstream big name tile. But the $6 Million Man is, and so seeing him as an action star, definitely. I may butcher some names here. Number 9, Kevin Sorbo. He was Hercules. And I'm doing totally, if I was doing kind of a diverse list or something, I might do an actresses one in the future. Xenon Warrior Princess is definitely there, but Hercules, you don't get more masculine than that. But he was also Dylan Hunt on Andromeda, the other Gene Roddenberry show that finally got made after Gene Roddenberry was gone. Next one, my number 8, Dean Cain. I really like this actor. He doesn't do a whole lot, but he is my Superman. I loved him as Superman in the New Adventures of Lois and Clark. Just a great thing. He really filled out the suit well. I don't like skinny Superman. That is a complaint I have about new ones, is they kind of making them real skinny, which they could, but I'd rather have George Reeves filling out that suit than that. My number 7, and I kind of also set a rule that some of these shows, they have a cast of action stars. So I told myself I'm only going to pick one from a show. Now, if they appear in multiple shows, then I could pick somebody else from the other show. But this one is the Dukes of Hazzard. So what Duke am I going with? I'm going with Bo Duke, John Schneider. If anything, because he plays Jonathan Kent in Smallville. He's also been in Yellowstone, different things. He exudes kind of manliness, and he was kind of like the boyish action star in the Duke of Hazzards, and you have to put them on the list. Kind of on the same lot. Who am I going to pick from my number 6? It's going to be somebody from the A Team. Who's going to, that's nothing but total crew of action guys, but I got to give it to Mr. T. Yep. So my 6th spot is Mr. T. My number 5 spot. See, this is where I put in really the before or after, because it really comes into play here. William Shatner. And you go, no. Star Trek's old Sergeant T.J. Hooker. That's how William Shatner gets on this. And, seeing him as an action cop I had not seen this until I went to go making this list, and I went back and watched some of this, and I'm like, it's gold. I love William Shatner. And of course, Kirk bumps him up a number of notches on this list. If it was just T.J. Hooker, he'd be number 10. But because he also played Kirk, he's my number 5. My number 4, Tom Selleck, Magnum P.I. Love Tom Selleck. I like the reboot Magnum. It is a completely different show, and you have to approach it kind of like the Hawaii Five. You have to approach those as completely different. I'm able to do that with some shows. Some shows, it's too hard for me. But the Magnum P.I. is one I really enjoy. But Tom Selleck as Magnum P.I., man, that is just, I put him up there with some of the guys from the movie action stars as he could have been movie quality. He's a great actor. He's got that. Of course, now he's doing Blue Bloods. He's not really playing an action role on Blue Bloods, but he's playing a character that saw some action. And so I really like Tom Selleck. Now, who is more 80s action than Tom Selleck? Well, my number 3 is David Hasselhoff. Yes, the Hoff was all the craze back then. Knight Rider is just awesome. If there is one car that even comes close to being as cool as a DeLorean, it is KITT. And of course, you got Mr. Feeney as the voice of the car. You gotta love it. Knight Rider was awesome, and it was tons of action. But he didn't stop there. Then he did Baywatch, which was just lifeguard action. David Hasselhoff, pure 80s TV action star. He's definitely discount Hollywood action star, but because he's TV cheese, but he's just a great action star. So who beats David Hasselhoff? Well, the one, the only, Chuck Norris. Yes, Chuck Norris. This is why we had to include the 90s. This could have been a shorter list, a top 5 80s, but you can't make an action TV list without putting Chuck Norris on there. He is Walker, Texas Ranger, and he is the living meme. Chuck Norris, when he does push-ups, he doesn't push himself up, he pushes the earth down. He can crush coal into a diamond. This guy, one roundhound kiss equals the Big Bang. It's Chuck Norris. And Walker Texas Ranger is like every like from my generation, that was like the Total Dad show. I remember that used to be what I grunted. It came on later, and I watched Chuck Norris as a preteen, and if I was at all bad, that was like my punishment, is I wouldn't be allowed to stay up and watch Chuck Norris that week. So Walker Texas Ranger. So that who in the world though beats out Chuck Norris? Who could possibly beat out Chuck Norris as an action star? Now this is where you're going to see my bias come into play, because it is the one, the only Richard Dean Anderson. RDA is, I want to meet this guy. This guy is amazing. I love MacGyver. His character's name is in the lexicon. It's in the dictionary. You MacGyver something. And as a locksmith, I MacGyver something all the time. Though as a locksmith, I can tell you that you cannot pick locks with a pocket knife. That was when all of a sudden I realized, oh, they just made stuff up. That means I can't stop a nuclear meltdown with chocolate bars. But MacGyver, like an action star that doesn't use guns. Love it. Love it. MacGyver's great. But he doesn't stop there. He then goes on to play Jack O'Neill on Stargate SG-1. Love that show. One of my favorite sci-fis of all time. And he really lends magic to the character. And I love, he knew himself as an actor. He came on and he said, hey, in the first season, we've got to have an arc, because I'm not going to play this suicidal, on a death wish actor for seasons of a show. So we have to have him get it. And they did it, and he played the emotional impact of that so well. But then he brought the humor to the show. And it is so beautiful when he is mocking bad guys with pop culture references that they don't get, and they're just getting frustrated with him. He's doing one-liners that they're really there just to amuse himself. Great. Just such a good actor. Such a good actor. Love MacGyver. The only guy that I've ever really appreciated a mullet on. Love that show. The reboot show has nothing on that original show. So that's why he's my number one pick, is Richard Dean Anderson. So who's my secret number 11? Well, that is Sammo Hung from Martial Law. And Martial Law was one of those things where it was a spin-off from Walker. It was very short-lived, but this guy did a lot of the choreography for Jackie Chan, for other action martial artists. He was like the super, like all that stuff. Like, he's the guy that developed that. So he got his own TV show where instead of being the guy directing or the guy choreographing, he actually got to be just this fat Asian dude that was like super quick. And seeing the crossover with Walker, and he's telling Walker that your hat makes you too big of a target, too easy to spot. And Walker's looking at him, and this guy is like 3 times the width of Walker because he's such a fat guy. And as a fat guy, I appreciate that. And he kind of like, really? You think I'm the bigger target out there? But just seeing him like just this fat guy, all the Americans are kind of like, hey, you're not going to be able to hunt down the... And then he's just, bam, 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 bam. So fast, doing crazy things. And the best thing about that show is I love the outtakes where they showed all the mistakes and people getting hurt. Doing that was so much fun. But he was short-lived, doesn't really have a household name, so that's why he didn't make the main list. But anyways, that's my list. Are there any that I missed? What are some of your favorite TV action heroes? Of course, if you expand it to newer ones, I think since Smallville on, every superhero show under the world has all been made, and they're all, of course, action shows. So maybe that should be another top 10 list. Top 10 superhero TV shows. If you want to see it, let me know down in the comments below.